it's fine. I'm going to speak from the heart.
I love it. Hi, Willa Gut Goodies. I'm Martina. And I'm Franca. We're two friends on a mission to create gut healthy products that we always wanted but could never find. Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the first question.
I'm ready.
The all-important one, actually. Just make sure I'm in the screen. Okay. What was the moment that you started taking your gut health seriously, Franks?
Well, I think for me, it's always, when you have a personal experience. For me, it was when I switched the contraceptive pill. I went from one to the other one. And suddenly I started experiencing a lot of discomfort, bloating, and I never had any struggles with gut health before whatsoever. So I really got into it and I started researching, reading books, like whatever, how does the contraceptive pill actually impact your gut microbiome? And, the more I got into it, the more I learned about nutrition, what's the right diet for me so I can actually offset the negative impact from the contraceptive pill.
That makes sense. I think it's probably something that a lot of people resonate with, and I think personally, so I didn't have those issues, but I had a lot of acne issues, and I think one of the big things that stems from that is gut health.
Yeah.
So I think for me, and I think for you as well, we speak about that quite a bit in terms of we both love a holistic approach. So we don't just suddenly want to go back on a pill or start doing something that could affect our bodies even more. It's what is the actual cause of this, right?
Right. Moving on to the next question. Why do we think gut health is more important than ever, and why should we invest in our gut health now?
So I think, to the first point, I think why, there's probably kind of two areas, because I think there's a personal why, right? So you just kind of describe why you did it. Yeah. I think a lot of people have that personal why. But I think there's also kind of a general why, and I think it's just simply the modern world that we live in. I think it's so difficult because a lot of the things that we consume can be quite processed, and I think most of the time we're over consuming sugar without even realizing it. Even when we go to things like restaurants, I personally don't always go you'll see in the menu and you'll see the rough ingredients of what something is made out of, but you don't see the little things that they add, whether that's using things like rapeseed oil or sugars. And I think that's kind of what I realized, and I think that's kind of why I think we should be looking at gut health more than ever, is because there's just so many things out there that we don't realize can be affecting our gut. And I think that's just simply a result of living in a very modern world, and the way that, and city living, I think as well, has a really big effect.
I think what also has a big impact is antibiotics, and nowadays it gets prescribed so easily. When I also struggled with skin issues, as you know. And when I first went to the dermatologist, they just prescribed antibiotics and they were oh, it's fine, it'll just go away. And then later on when I went to the holistic doctor, he was oh, how many rounds of antibiotics have you taken throughout your life? Because that also destroys your gut microbiome.
I think what's also really crazy about that is that antibiotics, it isn't even kind of the antibiotics that you take now, but even as a kid. And I think because we went to the same holistic doctor, he was the things that you take as a kid can still have an impact now because of all the cell memory. And I was that is crazy. And to think that it's still just being given out so easily, I think is wild. And it just, again, I think probably goes to the fact that why it's so important now is I think because we can actually have so much power over what we put into our bodies, and we can actually make that decision, and we don't have to rely on those external antibiotics, tablets to help us heal. I think there's just we can actually do it naturally. So
and I love that social media has really helped with the awareness of gut health, because I think if I think about my parents, they don't care so much about their discomfort or, how their gut health is doing.
So normalized, isn't it?
So it's for them, the struggles that they're experiencing is just normalized.
Yeah.
And luckily, I guess through the spreading of awareness, we now have the knowledge and the tools to actually help us.
Whilst there is so many tools and it's such a great advantage, there is a lot of it out there. So we really can learn how to, filter with that information and use it, hopefully, to our advantage, as opposed to feeling super overwhelmed by it. But
exactly.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Frank. So,
what have you got next from me?
So, did you face any challenges or frustrations when you've been trying to improve your gut health?
I think the challenge with gut health is that it's not a straightforward process, and it's very much a personal journey.
Yeah.
You know, you don't actually know what is causing you to have a bad gut health. So it's a lot of trial and error and sort of experimenting on yourself, what works for yourself.
Yeah.
Of course, there are certain guidelines, like we know that having a high fiber intake helps out. And we know that, you know, probiotics can help build your gut microbiome as well as postbiotics.
Yeah.
So these are general guidelines, but then of course you can have intolerances that you need to figure out, and you sort of need to do an elimination diet. And then if you have other, you know, very specific gut health issues like IBS, it's a completely different thing. So it really like takes a lot of time and patience. It also doesn't happen overnight, which, you know, for myself, I don't know, I think we're both like relatively impatient. You know, you only see results after months, so that can be a bit frustrating at the start.
Disheartening.
Especially since you don't know that what you're doing is actually going to help you in the end.
I definitely had that issue as well, and I think I needed to also hear it from, again, the holistic doctor, this magician that we keep talking about. I think I needed to hear from like a professional that like, keep doing what you're doing to start to see the results, because I think it takes probably on average, I mean, again, it's very personal and very different to everyone, but I think it might take, like for me, for example, when I was trying to heal my like acne, and I think I could only start to see the difference probably after 3 months or so. And obviously if you're starting to see your skin getting worse, then like you might just immediately think like, okay, well then it's not working at all. But I think you start to realize that actually, like if you do want to make those gut health changes, it really is like something that you have to treat in a sustainable way so that you can actually upkeep that gut health, and it isn't just like, you know, a 3-month miracle that you're trying to, you know, do. It really is about making sure that the changes that you make, you know, are small, they're subtle, and that they're sustainable. And I think that's kind of the one thing that I've also kind of realized, and part of the big frustration, like you're saying, is that we wanted things immediately. Like you want to see the results the next day, and like, you know what, maybe you will see something the next day, but it probably more mental than physical changes, right? But yeah, I definitely agree. I think that it can just be a bit disheartening, and I'd probably say the other thing, and we kind of touched on that, is I definitely find the amount of information really overwhelming, because like you'll read one thing and then you read another article which basically kind of contradicts what you had just read. So it probably goes back to the point of like everything is so personal, because your body might react to different things differently. But yeah, so I think finding a lot of the information and being very like critical about it myself, I think has been like the biggest kind of learning curve, but also challenge, because you know, us not really doing research ourselves, we can't really, you know, criticize the work that we read. It's just really taking it on board and testing things ourselves and trying ourselves, and I suppose going to speak to holistic doctors where we can. But at the end of the day, the journey of like creating gut health and having a healthy gut is our own, right? So,
But I like what you said about it being sustainable. It's not about, you know, overhauling your entire lifestyle from one day to another, because you're not going to be able to upkeep that. I think it's, you know, the importance is to implement subtle changes over time. And that is like, you know, maybe, I don't know, for your lunch or your breakfast, you start having more fiber, or adding, you know, fermented foods for like the pro and postbiotic benefits. So
no, I definitely agree. I agree. So, do you recall, Frank, the moment that we decided to basically take everything that we've just spoken about, all those personal experiences, gut health issues, etc., and turn them into a business idea?
Yeah, so I think the first time I thought about turning it into a business was when I saw a social media trend, and it was, don't exactly remember what the tagline was, because I think it got blocked after a while as well.
Really?
It did, yeah. And it was like, hot girls have gut health issues. And well, it did show me though that, you know, what I was struggling with, a lot of girls our age are also struggling with it. So it was good sort of finding that community online, but then at the same time, of course, this trend sort of glorified having gut health issues, which is not really
what you want.
What you want, right? You want a healthy gut should be glorified and should make you feel hot and sexy, and not the other way around. And so that's when I thought, oh, I'd like to change the narrative around this conversation of gut health. The second part was when I then looked into, okay, I want to improve my gut, I want to increase my like probiotic and fermented food intake. I was looking at what are the types of food out there, and firstly, the branding is just not targeted, I think, towards our audience whatsoever.
I agree.
It really, the food never looks very appetizing or appealing to you, so it doesn't encourage you to buy it, and so I thought that's something that's sort of missing in the market. I realized I don't like a lot of the fermented foods out on the market because you have a lot of vegetables that are fermented, and then of course you have your kefirs and stuff, but if you're lactose intolerant, that's not ideal for you either.
I also find that like fermented goods can appear as like quite like a niche product, if that makes sense. Like I feel like maybe it's also like a cultural thing, but for instance in Europe I don't find that there are a lot of fermented goods, and when it is fermented it does tend to be, like you're saying, the vegetables of the world.
You have like your sauerkraut, then like from Asia you have kimchi.
Exactly,
There's not a huge variety, but
a lack of variety, alright.
You know, I've got a chef in the family now, and he was just talking about all these things you can ferment, and he recommended this cookbook to me. And that's when I started experimenting myself. I was like, oh, what can you actually ferment? And they were fermented desserts out there, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, it was like
crazy.
I would much prefer eating those types of food than what's actually on the market.
I agree.
And if it's feasible, you know, to ferment, for example, fruit or make like a sweeter dessert, why is it not already on the market, or why does it currently not exist?
Also, both of us have sweet tooths, so I think that's like one thing that we realised as well, like that was really lacking. Is sweet products, right? It's just so savoury focused and vegetables, but you know, having a sweet tooth, why not make it a healthy sweet option?
Exactly. Because fun fact, you know, fermentation, the healthy bacteria actually eat the sugar, right? But that doesn't mean that if you're fermenting fruit, it suddenly will taste sour. You can still have a sweet taste. It'll just have a lot less sugar, which is, you know, double the benefits.
So you don't get that massive sugar spike when you're actually eating a fermented food. That's great. I think that kind of nicely leads us on to
the final question. So what is our mission behind creating our gut health company?
So I think you kind of nicely touched on it with our kind of business idea in general. Like we realised that we really wanted to create foods that are easy to incorporate, fun, kind of carefree. So you're not thinking about, okay, I need to transform my diet to have this like perfect diet. Like we wanted to create food, snacks that are just really easy to add into what you would have already eaten.
I think we want to showcase that it's not complicated. Also that it's just not for this, you know, it might now only attract the super like health gurus and wellness gurus. And no, it should be for everyone.
And I think it's probably part of it as well, like we don't want to, the way that we market it, we don't want it to be complicated. Like we want everyone to understand that, you know, if you incorporate XYZ, it will have gut health benefits. And I think right now when I look at like gut healthy products, I don't know, I just feel so overwhelmed that it's either a completely different dish that I have to add to my, you know, meals, whereas like I would love to, you know, add something to my porridge, or, you know, just like something that I can scoop up like randomly during the day. And I think that's kind of the other thing. And I guess our other mission or our why is to essentially just produce something that I suppose we realised that we really wanted, but we genuinely can't find anywhere. So I think, and that was kind of, I think, proven when we were trying to actually find, you know, co-mans to produce this, is that this doesn't exist in Europe at least. So that's kind of the reason I think why we wanted to bring this into the market in Europe for the time being.
I think, and lastly, just to make gut health sexy and hot, you know, we want to feel our best.
Yes, I agree.
Look our best from the inside out.
Yeah, make it approachable, fun. It doesn't have to be, you know, hard. It shouldn't be hard.
No. Yeah! Okay, these are all the questions.
Thanks for tuning in!
Thank you. Bye.